The mission of the network is to promote responsible AI governance and amplify regional perspective by building lasting capacities for fair, inclusive, and human-centered AI. For the origins of the network, back in June 2025, there was a regional Euro-Mediterranean forum called Aleph or Al Forum, organized by Analand Foundation in Tirana, Albania, where there was a dialogue and discussion around the topic of AI governance in the region. So there was this pillar of the forum, which is driving action. So the idea is how to transform the dialogue and discussion around the table in the forum and with the participation of people around the region, and to be as a continuous mission or initiative for the Aleph Forum. We, a group of participants from diverse, I would say, backgrounds, from civil society, researchers, developers, lawyers, etc., to create a network and amplify the Mediterranean voices in the global AI landscape. Currently, in the past months, we had several meetings and discussion on how would network would look like. So this is an informal initiative that align with the objectives of the forum I aforementioned. And we aim to create a platform to collaborate, to work together and discuss around to ensure the AI development in the region is safe, inclusive. I invite all people who are participants to join the network. You can see from the presentation, we have a page dedicated to anyone who want to join and support the network. For the housekeeping, before we start, so I would ask you to keep your microphone muted until the session or the Q&A session. You can either use the chat box or the built-in Q&A feature to ask your question either to any speaker on this event. And of course, as you see when you join the event, this session is recorded, and we aim to share it online and amplify and provide access to everyone who could not make it. If you have any experience or issue, please reach out to our colleague Huda, who is on this call that manage this meeting. And of course, you can enjoy. I will ask you to enjoy this session. Okay, so for the agenda, so first we'll have a keynote, and then there will be 2 panel discussion, followed by a Q&A session and a closure. So we'll start directly with the keynote titled AI Capacity in the South Mediterranean, a snapshot. It will be presented by Alejandro and me. Alejandro, he's a network, he's a member in the network. He has a PhD and a senior fellow. Sorry. I will also be presenting the report. I am Mohammed. I am the chair of EuroMedAI network. So let's start. So for this AI capacity report that we prepared in the network, I will outline some element of context that gave, I would say, the birth of this report. So first of all, there was the Global Digital Compact that was presented and adopted at the UN Summit of Future back in September 2024. Establishing commitment for all states for a safe, inclusive, and interconnected digital future for all. In 2025, in response to the call from UN member states within the GDC, the Global Digital Compact. The UNSG published a report that would be presented and was adopted this week, titled Innovative Voluntary Financing Option for AI Capacity Building, that outlines a strategic framework to bridge the growing AI divide between developed and developing nations. Following that, the General Assembly of the UN adopted a resolution titled AI Modalities Resolution by consensus without a vote, which of course followed the months of negotiation from February, led by 2 countries. This resolution includes 2 mechanisms to address this AI divide. The first one is an independent international scientific panel on AI. It tasks on producing annual evidence-based assessment based on existing research and thematic briefs to give the current state of AI development across the world. The resolution also includes a global dialogue on AI governance, which is the second mechanism, and it's truly the first global and evidence, or I would say global and inclusive platform, bringing more than 100 countries, particularly from the south and low developed countries. These countries have largely been excluded from existing processes led by G7, G20, etc. And today, 25 September, as we organize this event, the global dialogue on the first global dialogue on AI governance will take place in New York. Final context is this report aligned with EuroMedAI mission to amplify the voice of Mediterranean, especially the South Mediterranean, in the global AI governance. So for the methodology that we adopted to prepare this report, so first of all, we tapped on primary and secondary data that included for primary official policy and government documents. For secondary, there was verification of various reports and documents from Oxford, OECD, UNESCO, Union for Mediterranean, UNDP, and others. The way we did it is that in the resolution that was presented to the General Assembly, there were 5 tiers. These tiers represent the current capacity of the countries. So they proposed these 5 tiers from T0 to T4. So T0 represent what would you call the lowest capacity, while T4, this is the tier where countries have necessary resources and develop AI across the world. So let's see how countries in the south of Mediterranean are mapped. To do this mapping, the resolution proposed 5 key elements or domains. First of all is compute and infra. So here we're talking about the presence of scale of national data centers, high performance computing, GPU, etc. We are talking about data and governance. Is there any public data set? Are there law and framework for data protection? How open and interoperable data in a given countries? Third domain is skills institution. So here we're talking about AI workforce, academic programs, research, national AI centers, etc. Models and adoption. Does a given country use a pre-trained machine learning model? Is there a pilot in key sector like in health, agriculture, etc.? Strategy and cooperations. Does the country have a dedicated AI or digital strategy? Does it implement this strategy? Is there a budget, etc.? So these are the 5 domains that we will map the countries to. So first, for key findings. So first of all, in the countries that we mapped or assessed, so we have three countries in TO, T0. We have three countries in T1, which are AI experimenters, and we have three countries in AI ready. We also notice that there is a wide disparities that exist across the region. We also noticed fragmented data governance, very limited sovereign compute, and small AI workforce. In terms of national strategy, we have some countries that have a strategy or a policy. However, there's a gaps in implementation, planning, and financing, constraints that limit the AI development in these countries. Sector pilots, notably agricultural, health, and mobility, demonstrate early adoption, mainly by university and private sector, yet few initiatives scale beyond experiment. And lastly, regional cooperation remains weak despite shared challenges in energy, connectivity, and human capital retention. Now we will go for each countries and provide the scoring and level or tier for each countries. For Morocco, the tier based on the resolution is T2, AI ready. We noticed for Morocco, there is a digital Morocco strategy that was adopted in 2024. No dedicated AI policy or AI strategy as of today. However, consultation launched back on July 2025. There's also a data protection law handled or managed by a national agency called CNDP. Morocco hosts the only center across the Africa. It's called UNESCO Category 2 with the public sector partnership. Morocco operates what we call the Tubqal National Supercomputer that is ranked 98 in top 500 list of computers. For Morocco to move to the next tier, T3, Morocco should scale compute and data infra and integrate AI into broader planning and budgeting, establish a national AI strategy with a clear plan and budget, scale sectoral AI solution across government and services, ensure AI hubs drive public-private research and development and international collaboration, advanced legal framework for right to respect AI, and finally provide innovative and scaling the current startup funding offering. For Algeria, it ranked T2 AI as an AI experimenter. This national AI strategy effort published by a government-based called AI Council. Recently, Algeria adopted national strategy for digital transformation, but there is no much mention of AI development. Algeria has a personal data law that was adopted back in 2023. We saw there are some university-led pilots in the topic and establishing 100 million or $10 million startup funds launched in 2025 by the Algerian telecom company. And in 2024, Algeria announced that it will launch the first national AI data center. However, we could not find the capacity nor additional information about this data center. So for Algeria to move to the next year, so adopt a dedicated AI strategy with budget and implementation plan, expand compute. So we're talking about here data centers and clusters or adopt or work with other countries to have a regional hub, identify priority sectors and develop high compute use case, formalize AI centers as applied resource hubs with university, public institution, and private sector, and finally strengthen data governance and embed ethical and human rights safeguards. For Tunisia, Tunisia is also a Tier 1 in AI experimenters. Tunisia established an AI policy task force. It adopted a data protection law. There are several university-led AI pilots. Tunisia also developed an AI roadmap, and Tunisia actually announced that it will have an AI strategy, but not yet adopted. So to move to next year, to T2, in Tunisia is invited to establish an AI strategy based on some documentation we found that Tunisia will announce and this strategy in the upcoming upcoming November. Expand compute either by national data center or HPC clusters or regional hubs. Identify priority sectors and deliver high impact use case to build confidence and demand across the region. Formalize AI centers as applied research hubs with partnership with private sector, university, etc. Strengthen data governance and embed ethical and human rights safeguard. And finally, scale current sectoral skills program nationally. For Libya, Libya is mapped to T0, so it's AI nascent. Libya has a national AI policy based on a publication by the Communication and Informatics Authority back in 2024. It has an e-transaction law adopted in 2022. University of Tripoli operates a campus data center and started with support from Huawei. However, we could not find the capacity of this data center. To move to the next year, Libya is invited to do the following actions. First is to set up a national body to oversee the execution of the AI policy as outlined in the 2024 AI policy. Establish a national AI strategy with a phased roadmap and multi-stakeholder coordination body. Build what we call minimum reducible capacity. And this we will see what we mean by this with Alejandro. Across 4 domains, so compute, data, skills, and reuse of pre-trained models. Here we are talking about machine learning, deep learning models. Send up a national national AI center to manage shared resources, training, and engagement in international norms or standard. Launch basic pilots in priority public services. It can be in health, education, agriculture, etc. For Egypt, based on the 5 tiers, it ranked on T2. So Egypt is AI ready. Egypt just updated its national AI strategy. It adopted a charter for responsible AI back in 2023. It has a cloud-first policy. It adopted a data protection law. However, there is some executive regulation that are still pending. The compute capacity of Egypt in the city of knowledge and university like Cairo University and Alexandria. To move to the next tier, T3, Egypt should issue a personal data protection executive regulation and operationalize the personal data protection center, scale compute and data infra, and integrate AI into broader economic planning, regularly update national AI strategy, scale proven sectoral AI solution, expand AI curricula across all levels, and ensure that AI hubs drive public-private research and development and international collaboration. For Jordan, it's also a country ranked in T2, AI ready. Jordan has an AI strategy and implementation plan. It adopted an AI ethics charter back in 2022. It has a personal data protection law. It has some program in digital health transformation, as well as sectoral pilots in agriculture and education. And finally, it has a digital transformation strategy, which should be updated this year. For Jordan to move to the next year, or what we call AI enabled. So Jordan, we need to scale compute and data infra and integrate AI into broader economic planning, invest in national data centers, regularly update national AI strategy, scale proven sectoral AI solution across governmental services, ensure AI hubs drive public-private collaboration, and finally scale a startup in Jordan. For Lebanon, T1 and AI experimenters. Currently, there is no AI or policy or strategy. However, it has a digital transformation strategy. Lebanon just introduced this month to create a draft law to create an AI and technology ministry, which will be tasked to create an AI strategy. There is also, however, Lebanon has a strategy, but only in Lebanese industry from 2022 to 2015. There are some university or NGO-led hackathons and pilots. So for Lebanon to move to T2, Lebanon needs to publish and adopt a governmental-led AI strategy with priority sectors, KPI, budget, and etc. Expand compute, identify priority sectors, and deliver high-impact use cases to build confidence and demand. Formalize current AI centers as applied research hubs that, as I mentioned before, include private-public collaboration. Strengthen current data governance models and embed ethical and human rights safeguards, scale sectoral skills program, and finally, invest in creating public dataset and digitalization of government data. For Palestine, as you know that all of you and the current world know the current situation of Palestine. Normally, this page will be empty given the current genocide that the people of Palestine live since decades. However, we would like to highlight some efforts adopted or led by Palestinians, so to showcase, although they are extreme and they live in their situation, however, there are some initiatives. So the current initiative outlined or found in Palestine, there is an open data Palestinian portal with plus 40 dataset. There's the current government is developing a national AI strategy. Palestine also have a data strategy from 2022 to 26, something we could not find in any other country. So for Palestine to move to the next tier, of course, first we need to end the current genocide and work on humanitarian assistance and rebuild the whole country. The second thing will be establish and adopt a national AI strategy with a phased roadmap and coordination body. Build the minimum irreducible capacity across 4 domains, so compute, data, skills, and reuse of current pre-trained models. Stand up or set up a national AI center to manage shared resources, training, engagement in international norms and standards. And finally, launch basic pilots in priority public services. Syria, another country with really limited stability, so but that's why they are mapped to T0. However, again, there are some initiatives that we need to highlight in country like Syria. So first, there is a national AI digital event across the country. There was some MOU, a memorandum of understanding that was signed on telecom digital solution. There's also cybercrime and online regulation. To move to the next year, Syria would need to work on establishing a national AI, or at least digital strategy, with a phased roadmap and coordination body, build the minimum reducible capacity across 4 domains, so compute, data, skills, etc. Launch national AI literacy programs in partnership with private sector, university, and civil society. Establish an AI data center to manage shared resources, training, engagement in international norms and standards. And finally, launch basic pilots in priority public services. That I think we covered all the countries. I will now give the floor to my colleague Alejandro to speak about, from a technical perspective, the current compute capacity or gaps in the region. Alejandro, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. I wanted to ask you, are you going to share my slides or should I?
You should be. Oh, wait. 1 second. Stop sharing. You should be seeing my screen right now with your presentation, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, thank you for all the context. That's very, very useful for what I'm going to talk about. So yeah, my name is Alejandro. I'm currently a Talos Senior Fellow at a Paris-based think tank. And I'm going to walk you through a snapshot on AI compute capacity in the South Mediterranean. And also to recap a bit on the current situation. So we all know that AI is moving fast, right? But it's also true that compute, so chips, storage, power, networks, so the physical reality that AI is built on is lagging, as we saw with Mo, but it's also uneven. So it's not completely equally distributed around the South Mediterranean. A further complication here is that without a minimum floor, countries cannot even run applied AI for public services, as we will see. And the result here is latency, sovereignty, and cost risks. So we want to ask here, what is the minimum viable capacity every country should have at the end of this year, and what tiers make sense next? So if you go to the previous slide, Mo, yeah, here. So the blockers here, as you see on the left, is that there's limited uneven access to GPUs or AI chips or accelerators and to data center grade infrastructure. Also, as I mentioned, there's a lack of sovereign or near sovereign capacity for sensitive workloads, and this is particularly important in public interest computations. And also the bottom line, as you see below, is that only around 1% of global data center capacity is in Africa or in adjacent regions. So there's a huge lag in the global conversation. We aim to define 2025 minimum capacity that every country should have. And we, as Mo mentioned, mapped these capacities to the UN's tier-based system. So if you go to the next slide. We wanted to begin now by turning our attention to answering a basic but crucial question. So what's just enough to reliably do applied AI? And you may wonder, why is compute capacity a relevant metric here? And that's why I decided to include these graphs, by which you see on the horizontal axis the publication date of different relevant models. On the y-axis, the training compute. So you see that in general, they increase over time. But importantly, compute increases and capacity and capabilities increase. So the more access you have to compute, the more capability you have at your disposal. And that is why that is one of the crucial parameters and requirements that we are listing on the left. And that is what I decided to call A100 equivalent GPUs, because there's the need to standardize. So an A100 is a particular type of GPU that has some technical specifications. And when I say, for example, 48 A100 equivalents, it means 48 GPUs that are equivalent to that A100. We will see a bit more about that later. Then if you see right next to it, there's like this 200,000 GPU hours per year. And just for everyone to be on the same page, these GPU hours measure how much compute time you can actually use throughout a year. So I sketch a computation below, which is if you have 48 GPUs, you multiply that by the amount of hours there are in a year, like this 8,760, and you multiply with 50% utilization, because there's never 100% utilization in GPU clusters, you end up with this ballpark GPU hours per year that I mentioned on top. There's also the requirement of storing the data, so 1 to 2 petabytes with basic data governance, backbone connectivity, power reliability, so you want your services to be up in a reliable manner, and you want to allocate time with research share for public sector, academia, startups, and so forth. So this is the minimum operational capacity we are talking about in 2025. Translating all of this into dollars, so the compute, so 48 A100 equivalent plus networking plus storage would cost around 700K in the current market, dollars. And yeah, we believe this is the very minimum every country in the South Mediterranean should aspire to have. This is relevant for fine-tuning large language models, for inference, for classical machine learning. We'll see more about concrete use cases in the next slides. So if you go, yeah. So why local or near local, not only distant cloud, you may be asking. And these are the risks that I came up with. So basically, you cannot rely on far away clusters all the time, because some workloads just require low latency or real-time latency even. There's also concerns with data sovereignty. If you don't own your data, you are exposed on different geopolitical situations, particularly when you're dealing with sensitive information like healthcare, like other transportation data, etc. And also you cannot control your prices, right? If you rely on foreign infrastructure, then the market dictates how much you're going to expend. So yeah, that's another exposure. So we believe and we defend that prioritizing regional and onshore capacity improves performance, compliance, and also cost predictability. Yeah, next please. Yeah, so an overview of compute targets. I've basically touched upon this, but this is just to show on a single graph that as you progress down the ladder of tiers, so from nascent to experimenters, AI-ready, enabled, and developers, the amount of compute you will have available, but also the reliability of your network, your capacity, your uptime, all of those will consequently increase. If you go to the next one, I wanted to recap a bit, right? So we are saying that capacity is uneven across the South Mediterranean. So what we did, as Moa was mentioning, is group countries by what they can credibly do today and what they can reach next. So throughout these tiers, I'll provide you with an example or a couple of examples of what each compute capacity means for concrete operations and programs, right? So starting at the bottom of the ladder, we see tier 0, which is the nascent stage. And here we're talking about countries like Libya, Palestine, Syria, which Mo just discussed. So today they can do very limited pilots. They can run some analytics, experimenting with inference from LLMs, but they don't yet have the minimum capacity we've set as the 2025 floor. And that means if you want to fine-tune a model for a public service or run a modest research project, you're basically blocked. So the absolute priority is to lift tier 0 countries to the floor within the next 12 to 18 months, because otherwise the gap just gets wider and wider and the costs of catching up get just higher. As an example here, at this tier, and a hospital might be able to test a single chatbot for patient queries, but it cannot scale to all hospitals in the country, for example, and it cannot keep data reliably onshore. If you click, I think there's, yeah, so another one, tier one. In this case, these are the experimenters that Mo was discussing. So we find Algeria, Lebanon, Tunisia, and they've started to systematize. So they're able to run more structured pilots, some limited fine tuning on small, medium-sized models. They may already have dozens of GPUs, but they still need more reliable uptime, more storage, better network speeds. They are closer to the floor, but haven't reached it yet. So the opportunity here is that with a very modest lift, so moving from scattered pilots to a national cluster with fair access rules, they could join the 2025 floor quickly and build momentum in the region also. So as an example here, a Ministry of Agriculture at tier one could fine-tune a small model to give crop disease alerts, for example, in a few pilot regions, but it, for example, could not scale that nationwide. We need to move to tier two for that. So next, yeah, here we are dealing with AI-ready countries like Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and they already have more consistent infrastructure, so roughly 128 to 256 high-end GPUs, delivering 500,000 to 1.5 million GPUs hours a day. So that's enough to support multi-sector deployments and genuine research cohorts. So yeah, instead of running pilots, they can support ministries of health, agriculture, education, running applied AI projects in parallel. But the key here is not just more chips, it's also bigger storage, faster connectivity, service levels close to enterprise standards. As an example of what these countries may be able to do at this tier is, for example, a Ministry of Health could roll out AI-based triage tools across multiple hospitals, cutting waiting times for thousands of patients every day. Then we're moving on to tier three, which would be AI-enabled. And in this case, we don't find any South Mediterranean country here, which highlights this gap we're talking about. And this is the gap we want to close with the North Mediterranean. So here the capacity really scales. So this amount of GPUs and GPU hours per year allow countries to stand up national AI platforms. So for example, a platform that supports health diagnostics across all hospitals in the country, or real-time traffic optimization across entire cities. They can also guarantee scaled public services with high uptime. For example, just to have an idea, like this 99.95% means less than about 4 hours of downtime per year, which is pretty reliable. So the leap from tier two to tier three is not, I would say, just quantitative, it's also qualitative, because it allows you to go from scattered deployment to nationwide platforms. And at this tier, commuters could see nationwide smart transport systems, for example, so buses that are rerouted dynamically, traffic lights that are coordinated, congestions reduced in real time, for example. Moving to the last tier, so the top of the ladder, these are the developers. And this is when a country isn't just applying AI, but also building and exporting it. So in this case, this amount of GPUs allow you to train your own large language models from scratch, not just fine-tuning them, and you can export services and position yourself as a regional AI hub. I want to be clear here, this is not the near-term ask for the South Mediterranean. This is more of a horizon, so something like a direction of travel. And for now, the goal is to make sure that everyone clears the floor, so the 2025 floor, and then we move step by step up the tiers. So as an example of what could be done here on this tier is a country could train its own LLM, for example, in its own language, and export those services across the region. So you become a provider, not just a consumer of AI. And finally, we wanted to discuss this option of a regional hub. So if there was this South Mediterranean hub, or you can mirror an East-West hub with around 800 to 1,100 equivalent GPUs, you could cover cause cross-border demand spikes. So meaning if one country really needs workload to be pushed forward, then this can absorb part of the impact. You can give redundancy for critical services so that if you cannot afford something to be down, then this can take up the job. You then reduce reliance on faraway capacity, and you leverage existing HPC anchors. As Mo was saying, for example, Morocco has a very high-performant computing cluster. We wanted to emphasize, if you click Mo, this complements, so this shouldn't replace national floors. The absolute priority is that national floors are met, and this is more of a backup and an extra layer that should be there, but should absolutely not replace the national floors. So finally, concrete asks. I think the 2025 floor should be found and delivered in every country in the South Mediterranean. As I said, the more we wait, the more costly this is going to be. We should adopt, or these countries should adopt, these tiered targets so that the progression is sustainable, and explore the idea of a regional hub with fair use access and strong governance. So this is a pragmatic way to put a floor under the AI divide while building towards regional strength. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro, for this amazing presentation. It was technical, but it's essential that we understand, how much capacity our region need to ensure that AI development is contribute to the economies of the countries across the south of Mediterranean. And it was detailed, interesting, and I would love to know, maybe someone can do like an international mapping of all the country, but we will know who would be in the fourth, in the fourth level of this capacity tiers. Thank you, Alejandro, for all this, and of course we will still have some input from you in the discussion. And now we go to our first panel discussion. We have some amazing speakers, and I will give floor to Linda to moderate this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ermelinda Canusce. I'm a political scientist working mainly on topics on AI governance. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to try to help and support the work that has been done, especially on the south of Mediterranean. So my main work focuses on governance and democratic participation and the way digital transformation can strengthen or even weaken societies. That's why I'm honored to moderate this panel on capacity, rights, and systems in AI governance. Our panel today brings diverse perspectives and diverse topics, from smart cities to national security and transformative AI to critical diagnosis of algorithm colonialism, and to finally lessons from youth policies on how to embed human rights in governance. So my main job here as a moderator is to keep time, and I hope this works out well, considering the task of keeping Mediterraneans in times is a bit not the easiest of job. It's sometimes even harder than governing AI itself. But let's start with no further latency with our first panelist, Asma Ben Bahida. She brings a rich expertise on sustainable digital transformation and transition and smart cities. Asma is a construction engineer by background, entrepreneur, and AI and innovation expert, driving sustainable digital transition and exploring synergies between AI, blockchain, and smart technologies. She blending her engineering foundation with a bold creative mindset, and she develops out-of-the-box solutions that foster communities. Asma is also a board member of Agoria, a Belgian federation for the technology industry, and the ambassador of Digital Africa Cluster. And she mentors initiatives such as the Green Tech Europe. So Asma if we think about AI systems as an ecosystem of readiness, what would it take for a city to align its schools, infrastructure, and governance so that digital transformation actually improves everyday urban life?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased. Do you hear me all? Yeah. Hello,
Yes.
good morning, everyone.
Yes, Asma. All good.
Yeah, it's a privilege to speak today with you on this topic, which is really, really close to my heart, but also critical for the future of our regions. Is it possible for me to share my screen? The PDF, just quick question. Yeah, maybe if you stop, perfect. Oh yeah, no, it's not possible. It's okay. So, as I said, it is really critical topic for our future, for especially for our region. So from skills to systems. Why is it matter first? You should know that the South Mediterranean is one of the fastest urbanization urbanizing regions in the world. And by 2050, nearly 70% of our population will live in cities, which means that brings obviously huge challenges, as such as climate change, mobility, waste, energy. But also with that, whenever we have challenges, we have obviously great opportunities. I think if we look to the history, whenever we have challenges, we see like a new business model, new product. It's also opportunities for startup to be innovative, etc. So we obviously can harness this opportunity with technology, but wisely. So this is bring us to our topics. I will just go through my slide. Maybe just a quick question also to interact with the public. Who knows already what is smart cities? Maybe just with a reaction on comments or something like that. So smart city is actually how we are using technology to improve the life of the citizens in their daily life. So the smart city is all about the citizen. And here the technology obviously plays really huge number. But AI, although we use it, if we imagine in the Mediterranean region, for example, let's picture with me a guy in Casablanca. He's going to his job, and then the bus is late. There is a jam for the traffic. We can see, for example, the air polluted, etc. There is a lot of challenges, but it's the same happening, for example, in other cities. If we're talking about Istanbul, what the nature disaster that happens in the last years, etc. So each region has its own challenges, but at the end of the day, it's the same that we can resolve with the technology, and especially with AI, as the topic is about AI. But AI is not only about the algorithm. AI is also about the people. So the current gaps that we have actually in the Mediterranean region today, as we are talking about the skills and the capacity, we are facing nowadays the digital literacy for all the citizens. So not only we should educate people, the engineers and the developers, etc., about AI, but as the goal is to use not the technology, we are going really from the AI to building systems. As we are talking about building systems to improve the life of the citizens, we should incorporate also in our knowledge sharing the citizens. With that, we face in the digital literacy. So we should also contribute, bringing awareness to such topics by educating also the citizens, so the older people, to include them, to be really inclusive for the youth, for the women, in their also specification, etc., to integrate, also to adapt in the curricula, the study. So we have stronger foundations related to building really skills. So really including everyone, and not just the one that are in the tech space, if I may say that, in that space. So this is the first point for me. It's in when it comes to building real systems. So the digital literacy for all citizens. The second point is applied AI for local urban challenges. Nowadays, we see there is AI and has been really mentioned good examples earlier. So the hospital, etc. I was like, okay, this is really nice. We are talking about now smart cities. It's related to my topic. They're already introducing it, which is nice. So when we're talking about the smart city and building this AI from the algorithm and moving to the systems, so we have to actually interconnect not only the mobility but also the energy, the education, the hospitals, the health system, etc. So when we are talking about that, we have to keep in mind that we are resolving local challenges. So sometimes we see also solutions that AI but doesn't take into account the urban specific challenges that we have. For example, recently I was in Cameroon talking about the topic smart cities, and then I got a question. They were like, okay, we were really interested. We went to a smart city in Barcelona, and we wanted to use the same systems, let's say like IoT, IoT sensors, etc. But the thing that we often forget, to be smarter city and to use AI and technology, we have first to ask the question, as we do as businesses, what is the need? And at the same, when it comes to the city and to building the whole ecosystem, what are the challenges we are facing? We don't have to apply what's working there because the need is different. The soil is different. The climate is different. The challenges are completely different. So this is one of the main gaps, that also we are facing in the Mediterranean region. And also, this is something also I see often. So we develop some solutions. So as has been mentioned, so AI is super important. We can trade the models, the algorithm, etc. But the cross-disciplinary collaboration, it's not happening yet, unfortunately. Maybe you can correct me if you got some example that I'm not aware of it yet. But usually when we see it's either like in the health tech or either like in mobility, etc., and we have really specific designed solution, and they are not interconnected. I will mention, we will talk about obviously about governance. I'm so happy also to see that Linda, you are in that space and you know better better than me maybe on the topic. But to get there, we need to share the data. We need to have this cross-disciplinary collaboration, not only between also the different segmentation, but even, for example, in each sector. We see, for example, some hospitals, they want to build their own model, etc., but they don't exchange and read from the output what happened in other hospitals. Why reinventing the wheel when we are already, for example, have other solution? Let's benefit from there. Then you will say, and I see the question come in because it happened to me, okay, but how we protect the data privacy, the data security, in which is obviously really relevant question. And I will answer with, we have different methodology in AI, which you are maybe aware of. Beside the cryptographic security of the data, we could have obviously the anonymization. So for example, in the case of the hospital, as been mentioned, I will stay on that space to be aligned. So for example, we can delete the names, etc., without the gender, and train our model and get the output of it. And then each hospital, for example, they will train the model, and then we can share our data to train the central model, and then we get the output. This is one of the way to do it. The second way how to do it is we have, for example, what we called federal learning. Federal learning, what is it? It's like we train our model in our hospital and we share the output of our study, and then each hospital will share the data, and then we train the central model. Or there is also other methodology, as obviously I will not go through it to not take too much for my presentation, but for example, injecting some noises, and then we can find the real where it's coming from, and then with that manner we can obviously share our data. So this is important to have the cross-disciplinary. So this is just an example, just related to the hospitals to really created this cross collaboration between different hospitals. We can obviously do it with other segmentation, because as we are talking about the city, we want to make the life of the citizen easy. So how For example, related to the air pollution, it's connected. It's connected for the building. When we go through the building, for example, it's connected to the security with facial recognition. We can have automatic, for example, the lighting is triggered, and then when someone leaving, etc., the temperature is adapted and functioning by analyzing for example, the habits of that person working in the office building, etc. So we can actually building those bridge between mobility, the buildings, etc. So we can really benefit from it and having the whole system. So because this is the topic, and once we have now like this literacy, digital literacy, the class collaboration, and apply it to region, so we are building the skills, right? Which is super important, the skills for everyone to benefit from AI, from technology, which is super important. So without the skills, even the best AI project obviously can fail. But the skills are not enough, obviously. We have to move from the skills to the systems. The skills are, let's say, as the seeds, and the systems are the soil. And it is super important, I think, in all contexts, because when we are talking about smart cities, and often I see people only talking about the algorithm or the IoT sensors, etc., but they forget there is the whole process. It's not about just the solution, it's also about the process. And I usually like to say the 3P. It's the process, the planet, and people. It should be focused on people to be sustainable, for me to be smarter, and also to have a process. And process is almost, it's like kind of the system behind it, because to understand the need, to establish the connection, the security of data, etc., etc. So a true
May I
AI.
actually just to get a bit the point right, and also to address this question for the general public who might not always be on the technical side.
Of
When you
course.
talk about skills, you are talking about like who are you? Who do you have in mind? So do you have like skills that are generally in the hands of the engineers, of the decision maker, of the policy makers? Or skills when it comes to the general public in understanding how AI works and increasing the level of AI literacy even for all of the stakeholders. Do you have any like a pool of people in mind?
Yeah, of course. So when it comes to, when I was mentioning the digital literacy, in my mind, it wasn't obviously just the engineers and the developers. So we have also to put more efforts to promote those sections for men as for women, obviously to build innovative solutions. But for me, digital literacy, it's for the, as we say in French, personne lambda, like for the citizens. So it could be to adapt to the knowledge of the citizens. For example, to educate them how to use the solution, to educate them, so the youth to learn it from school. This is why, like I mentioned, the curriculum. So so we get more in the AI literacy, as you mentioned, for the youth, the students when they are in school, but also for ordinary people, because nowadays we have a lot of technologies, but some they don't know how to use it. So building also this infrastructure, which is one of the next point I was going to mention, is like to have kind of the kiosk or offices to teach, for example, to support older people how to use the technology once we implement it. So it's not just the solution and that we provide, we have to include them, but also the public administration, public policy. Why? Because when the citizen has to use it, they should be aware of what is the solution is, and to know also the framework of the technology, so they can build better, or like to make better decisions in terms of policies. If you want to contribute to better life of
Yes,
citizens.
I will actually go with, and I feel that it is this is a brilliant point, and I also want to ask regarding exactly precisely this, because
Yeah.
smart cities itself seems like very a top-down solution and system, where decision makers, politicians, together with their tech companies sometimes, or tech supporters,
Yeah.
build systems that are used in different settings. Now, My question is like, how could communities contribute to this, and how can we engage communities in terms of, you know, how this type of technology could be deployed in urban contexts?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, for me, smart city is not really top down. This is why I said like it's really something horizontal, and we should like really involve everyone when it comes to skills, because it's about the citizens. So the public policies, the engineers, the teachers, obviously, because now also we wanna educate the teachers, because they are facing the youth, the students are seeing the technologies as ChatGPT, etc. So they has been already to be educated on the such topic, etc. So if you are talking specifically, if you want me to focus specifically on the skills in terms of education from skills to system and related to the schools, I think we can't adapt and align with that without going and focusing in three main points. So the education, obviously. So when we're talking about the education, as I said, we to equip the students to have digital literacy, critical thinking, bringing awareness to the topics, doing training, doing the marketing, the communication to involve the communities, integrating also the NGOs, educating on them, like building, and have also incentives, because whenever we have incentives that push people to know more, to read more, to understand actually the impact that's creating on them. Because when we're talking, because when we're talking of technology, sometimes we see people, they are against it because it's complicated their life. We are as the geeks, or we are as the professionals and scientists and engineers, you're like, okay, wow, this is a huge great solution. But for them sometimes it's, oh, okay, this is I used to do it like by papers and it was super easy, and now I have to put that and that and look for that, and it's super complicated. So we see that. But once we involve them into the system, so this is why I said not top down. We involve them to the system. We involve them so they understand how it impacts their daily life. Then they are the ones, for example, requesting it. I remember like a few years ago, I gave like a training, a conference about the use cases of smart cities with blockchain blockchain use cases for smart cities, and it was specifically just for women. What was astonishing is at the end, when I was mentioning the different use cases, they were like, "Why we don't have that?" And that specific question, it kind of stuck on my mind. I was like, they are really asking to get those solutions, and they were from all backgrounds. They weren't tech people. And I was like, because you aren't asking for it. And then I realized something very important, because we don't incorporate them into the system. So not only educating the skills, but getting them into the system. And that starts from bottom line, from the students, from the youth, the public administrations, the public policies, the teachers, the citizens, the NGOs, the civil, to building the community and educating on it. So the critical thinking, when they understand how it will impact their work, actually, they are the one requesting for it, because they were like, this is what make my life easy. When we are talking about sustainability, sometimes they're like, okay, maybe this is also like the price is too much expensive. But then they understand actually with the climate change, it could impact your health, it could impact that and that. Then they were like, okay, they believe in it, they want to contribute to it. So bringing awareness and getting them into the system, it's actually super important and updating. So as I said, promoting the entrepreneurability skills and ensuring inclusivity with women, youth, and also NGO. But the second point also for schools, if we are talking just now focusing on the schools related to education from skills to system, we have obviously AI, cities, digital transformation cannot work without strong infrastructure, which has been also mentioned earlier on. So to build this kind of system, we have to ensure that we have also good connectivity in schools. If we are starting with that, open, secure data platforms, as I mentioned, for example, between hospitals, the administrations, the schools. So we have gamification, which is also, this is a really good, important point for youth, which I noticed, because in that way they learn more, they're more interested about the tech aspect when there is gamification and its concept like becoming more and more trendy. And really at the end to have interoperable system, because sometimes often in the public administration, when we have e-services, we have some service, and then you have also to log out, and then you put again and again all your data, etc. So the interoperable system to build this system at the end is very important, that we allow AI solutions to scale, but also we have to think it is really as digital rules and bridges that really makes this innovation flow across the city. And the other point, the third point, so beside education and infrastructure, which I don't want to take too much time on it, and it has already mentioned in GPU, etc. But so the third aspect, which is also super important, to really align the city with the readiness. With the readiness of this digital transition is the governance. We need also policies. So sometimes we have, or obviously, the startup that push innovation, but sometimes that's not enough. They need the support. They need also, in the other hand, policies that push people also to use their solution. We need also that to have this kind of framework. We need to establish policies. This is why, like, when we're talking about the skills, also to involving the policymakers in the education part about AI literacy. In the leadership, they have to take the leadership, that so we can really create that trust, because also often when it comes to citizen and AI literacy in skills, there is the lack of trust, which is also understandable, because when sometimes you see some solutions and you are like, okay, this is not making, I don't know where is my data going to with ID. The people, they don't like to connect with ID to every platform, etc. But whenever we build this trust, again, they are more than happy to help, because there is trust, they understand, and this is why, like, involving the citizen is super important in the Mediterranean region. And having also the ethical framework for that, so how we are using the data, which kind of the data we are using, having really transparent procurement also for different AI solutions, whenever we have that rigorous environments that support also this kind of innovation, but also really protect the citizens. Again, this is why we are, for me, I know we don't often see the topic AI in smart city, but for me it's really relevant, and it's really underconnected, because we use AI obviously to provide make life better for the citizens, and this is actually the definition of smart city at the end. So voila.
Yep.
And so, as I said, like, we don't have to forget that we have to protect the citizens, their data, their interests, etc. And the governance is the glue actually that will make sure that technology actually serves everyday life of just being instead of just being like pilot project. So I think with this, at the end, with this three dimension, the education, the infrastructure, the governance, we can really align. AI becomes more than a tool. It becomes a catalyst for better mobility, better, cleaner energy, and for ultimately better quality of life of citizens. And this is why, like, I really liked this topic. It's more than just the skills. With that, we move from skills to systems, building not only individual capacity, but also the structure that makes AI sustainable for smart cities for our region.
Thank you, Asma. And actually closing it with the note that AI, it's about making people's life better and trying to build cities which are working for people. I will continue with the next panelist, and I'm glad that you brought also the topic of education, because Parv, who is also an AI safety researcher at the Georgia Tech Research Institute, where he conducts research and focuses on cybersecurity, CBRNI, which is chemical, biological, and radiological and nuclear AI threats. He works on this type of very important topic and national security. He is going to talk today about especially the role that AI could play in education. And I feel that this is one of those topics which is also close to my heart, being myself also a lecturer at the university. So Parv, without no further ado, I want to actually ask you, what do you think on terms of usage of AI at the university level? So how do you think that we can use AI in terms of while keeping it or while safeguarding the academic integrity and rigor, and also using AI as a tool for innovation, equity, and critical thinking, and without, taking away from the students or from this education experience the idea that they're learning actually something.
Yeah, thank you for the question and for the segue and for the introduction. Yes, I'm very happy to speak to all of you all today, and thank you so much. I'll be covering a little bit about academia, but mostly I'll be talking about AI as a source of national power. This is what I spend most of my time thinking about. If we could pull up the slides, that'd be great. But yeah, before I get started, of course, I must say that everything I'm presenting is in my personal capacity, does not represent necessarily the opinions of the Georgia Institute of Technology nor the Georgia Tech Research Institute. I'm presenting on behalf of the AI Safety Initiative at Georgia Tech. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk about this in a second. We are a community of technical and policy researchers that are concerned primarily with mitigating threats from advanced AI. And I think the point that I want to talk about, and one thing that Mohammed and Alejandro touched on earlier, is that the timelines to transformative AI are probably going to be less than we expect. So right here is the famous meter time horizon graph. So on the x-axis, you have the release date of the LLM, and then on the y-axis, you have a log scale of how long it takes a human to do that task. And these are for different software engineering tasks, just because it's easiest to put an AI in this environment. So for example, to answer a simple question, it might take you around 30 seconds. To count the words in like a long passage, it might take you 5 minutes. To train a classifier, right, a machine learning classifier, that might take you about an hour. So if you look at this graph, what we see, it's a log scale on the y-axis. And what we find is that the length of tasks that LLMs can do is doubling about 7 months. So right now, reliably, GPT-5 can do tasks that would take a human a full hour autonomously, right? This is quite impressive, but what's more impressive to me is this doubling time of every 7 months. So if we extrapolate, and this trend has held for quite some time, what we see is, okay, in 7 months from now, so this is something like next April, we expect AI to be able to do tasks that take 2 hours. 7 months from that, 4 hours. 7 months from that, 8 hours. And 8 hours is a full day of software engineering, right? So what we expect to see is this quite rapid growth in long horizon autonomous AI agents. And what this implies is that the timelines before we get what we would call like general intelligence, or the kind of intelligence where a lot of the white collar work is automatable, is less than we would expect. Next slide, please. Right. And we can already see this is true in some cases. I'll be using software developers as a kind of proxy throughout this talk for general job market, this kind of thing, because there's the most data about them. And also because they are the group that's most exposed to AI, because AI companies have a very, very high incentive to automate them first. Because, of course, the faster you're able to automate software engineering, the more you're able to move as an AI company against your competitors. So here we see this study is done by the Stanford Digital Economy Lab just a couple of weeks ago, in fact. And what they find is this dotted line is ChatGPT's release date. And as you can see, for almost every level of career, so mid-career, senior career, even developing career, you still see this upward growth in software developers. However, differentially, it's really, really affecting early career and mid-career roles. What this means for academia is we can expect new graduates to have a harder time getting jobs if they're in particularly AI-exposed occupations. So yeah, these have like pretty devastating consequences for example, universities looking to expand computer science programs or other programs that are differentially very automatable by AI. Next slide, please. Right. So what we expect to see, so this is kind of like one side of it, right? We see very fast AI growth. So we can expect AI to become more and more powerful on kind of this exponential scale as we've been seeing so far. We also expect huge job loss, particularly for early career workers in very AI exposed occupations. Thirdly, we expect centralization of power. And what I mean by this is that countries that have access to AI in like a truly frontier sense will increasingly begin to accrue productivity gains. This is a fact of economics, but also a fact of like geopolitics. So, for instance, imagine what you could do if you had an intelligence analyst that could work 24 hours a day, that didn't have to rest, and that was even 80% as good as your average human worker, right? This is what already exists. And if you look at like public DoD contracts for the Department of Defense in the United States, you see that they're working towards this goal of being able to augment existing military and intelligence services by using AI. And you can see this in other sectors as well. For national competitiveness, just purely making workers more productive is going to give your country an edge. Because if your average software developer is able to do the job of 7 software developers, suddenly you're able to hire a lot less people and have much higher productivity. Similarly, right, I talked a little bit about the military implications of this, but also for things like finance, right? Being able to collate large sets of data and analyze them in an unstructured way is exactly what AI is currently good at. So being able to utilize these things will further increase productivity. And what we expect is, when I say we, what I'm talking about here is like economists that think a lot about the future of AI, as well as people that work in AI safety, as we expect a centralization of power, particularly around either the US or China, as AI becomes more advanced. Um, and the question really will be like, what does this look like? First of all, will it be the US or China that races ahead first and is able to accrue gains? But also, how will this impact other countries? So particularly, for example, in the global south, and also in regions traditionally not aligned, or traditionally unaligned, or maybe like in the middle of aligning with either the US or China. For example, the Southern Mediterranean, or even in some cases now, especially like post-Trump, the EU. So this is what I think a lot about, and here are my recommendations. If you go to the next slide. Right. So I think it is very important for the Southern Mediterranean to earn a seat at the table for national security. Um, my claim is this, right? Uh, if AI becomes an increasingly larger part of geopolitics, as I expect, and this allows for centralization of power for the Southern Mediterranean states to maintain power and, in fact, be able to gain power during this turbulent time, and therefore gain influence in their other foreign policy goals. It makes sense for them to earn a seat at the table, right? They want to be vitally important to the AI ecosystem, in a truly global sense. And this is, again, I want to point out, this is different from creating your own AI systems within. So one thing that I really liked about the T0, T1, T2, T3, T4 methodology is that it showed levels of compute, right? But the highest level was AI developers. I think this is pretty unlikely. So you can imagine if we're getting like very powerful models, right? We're getting closer to that like $1 trillion GPU clusters that host the best models in just a couple of years. That is not enough time for countries in the Southern Mediterranean to build up new data centers. It's not time for anyone outside of the US to or China to build up these new data centers, right? The exception maybe is the Middle East, but that's because they're throwing a lot of money they have because of natural resources and other things. So, for this reason, it makes sense for the Southern Mediterranean to find other ways to get a seat at the table besides just compute. And this seat at the table has to be not at producing AI, not at integrating AI into their own economies, but in being a vital part of AI development itself, of the very frontier models. Um, so this is my claim. So next slide, please. Right. So given this, I started thinking about what are the comparative advantages that the Southern Mediterranean has. I think one like very big comparative advantage is materials. Because of geography and also like I think Alejandro touched on this, proximity to Europe, it makes sense for them to be fueling some of this compute infrastructure and be kind of the backbone. Right now, a lot of these key materials that are used in data centers to create chips, 100% of the supply is in China, right? 100%. This is obviously a big weakness for countries not aligned with China, for example, the US, but also countries in the EU who are looking to build up their own compute infrastructures, and obviously countries in the Southern Mediterranean as well. So for this reason, I think one way academia can really help is by accelerating research and development into material science and materials extraction. How do we exploit these natural resources in an efficient and sustainable way, right? And also, how do we accelerate this exploitation such that it does not actually damage the environment while still being useful for compute, right? And on the right here, we see this is actually from the UN Development Program. It's a projection of mineral demand by 2050. And what we can see is a lot of these heavy minerals and rare earth materials, we see like accelerated demand. And this often goes in conflict with the net zero emission demands of the company. So that brings me to my first point, which is acceleration of renewable infrastructure. The Southern Mediterranean is in a surprisingly good place to take advantage of hydroelectric specifically, but also wind and solar, right? Um, and the energy demands of AI are going to be huge. If it such happens that the EU or some countries in the Southern Mediterranean start building massive amounts of infrastructure, so massive amounts of compute infrastructure, we can expect energy prices to increase throughout the region. And we're already seeing this to some extent. If this is true, then what we need to do as a country in the Southern Mediterranean is to accelerate this development of renewable energy and more specifically train the best workers possible to work on these renewable energies. So this looks like accelerating environmental engineering programs, accelerating electrical engineering programs, mechanical engineering programs, right? You want to create this class of very, very high skilled workers whose AI's job is unlikely to take, as well as a lot of industrial talent that's able to quickly onboard this renewable infrastructure projects. And this is all well and good, and these are kind of like activities that the universities can do on their own. But my last point is partnerships, and this is where I think one thing that's very important, and Alejandro, you touched on this, is getting a very close partnership between national security organizations and government organizations and academia. This seems extremely important to me. Sorry.
Can you please close your mic?
There we go. Yeah, this seems very important to me because frankly speaking, our timelines are too short and the situation is building so quickly that it makes sense to have heavy government investment in these areas. And partnerships doesn't just mean within the country. I think one key thing that that universities could do right now to be more effective 5 years from now is start building partnerships with universities in the United States and China, and also building partnerships with AI companies. So for example, a lot of AI companies, especially Anthropic comes to mind, have programs where they will partner with universities around the world for beneficial deployments of AI. So having experts on site in the Southern Mediterranean from these AI companies that can both develop the infrastructure there, the AI infrastructure there, but also inform how the development of AI and related materials should go in that nation. And that's kind of these are kind of the comparative advantages that I see the Southern Mediterranean being able to accelerate a lot. If we go to the next slide. Right. And my final point is timelines are probably shorter than you expect. So if we can imagine some sort of centralization of power by 2030, which doesn't seem unlikely, this is actually where like I would say the mass of my probability distribution lies. In this case, if timelines are shorter than you expect, then you should also expect that you need to have infrastructure and partnerships and all of this in place by around 2028, right? Because in the last 2 years, you can expect everyone else trying to do this as well. If this is true, then we probably need to start now or in a few months from now. And we need to invest quite heavily. So I am not an economist. I am very unfamiliar with the budgets of countries in the Southern Mediterranean. But if I had power over them, what I would say is a large part of those, especially R&D budgets, need to go towards developing AI capacity in these sectors. And this doesn't just look like building more compute. This looks like supporting academia, supporting R&D, and more importantly, supporting pipeline building and building of skills throughout the nation.
Thank you very much, Parv. This is very insightful, and thank you very much for the suggestion. The next panelist will talk again about the topic of AI divide. We have Cristiano Lucchini, who is an independent researcher in AI safety and system architect. He's also a creator of the preventive chaotic intelligence methodology and its applied tool, which with the ICP Explorer is a framework for understanding and mitigating emergent and technological threats. Cristiano operates through a radical interdisciplinary approach, bringing creative communication, Vedanta philosophy, and his hands-on work as an AI data trainer. So, Cristiano, could you please share a bit with us your vision and ideas regarding the AI divide, the reason of the AI divide across the Mediterranean countries?
Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for this opportunity, and congratulations to my previous colleagues for all the contents that they shared. Firstly, in the keynote, that was really inspiring, and they make me reflect a lot, especially when they talked about Palestine, and we are talking, like in this case, about building, and there is, the contrast of destroying at the same time. So we live in this eternal dualistic, condemnation in this life, and I would like to start from this, like, a very quick and passionate storyteller because, you know, the topic is crucial, and the AI divide in South Mediterranean. But to understand such a modern divide, I believe we must have the courage to look much further back, because I ask you to imagine with me dust and sweat. We are in the Fertile Crescent 10,000 years ago during the agricultural revolution. A man, a woman, doesn't matter, and they hands grip a pointed stick, and before them the earth, a seamless all, a continuum, okay? And then the gesture, the beginning of everything, you know, they draw a furrow. And so, as I said, you know, I think, and not just me, but, you know, I'm taking theories that I like very much from, you know, various scholars. So this, you know, creation of the private property during the agricultural revolution generated, you know, this effect of, you know, a line that creates a here and a there, okay? So before we were, you know, nomads that believed in the interconnection of everything among us, and among nature, and then, you know, this effect on a deeper level, this also curved and reverberated something in which our thought still flows today, okay? The separation that, you know, also, and especially, as I will say, in AI, it's truly, you know, incredibly clear, and you know, and it's like, you know, the Truman Show, you know, we live in this life is tripled, and maybe I think more in the AI portrait of cultures. And but I will get to that. So to divide the field, you know, meant to divide the harvest, mine from yours, friend from foe, right from wrong, good from evil. And I wanna mention here the chaos theory that is tremendously, I think, more than ever useful today to understand our constant and, you know, cycling problems, because chaos theory calls this a strange attractor. So an almost invisible path, so the furrow 10,000 years ago, that guides our system's evolution. And this dualistic binary thinking, 0 and 1, has been our favorite strange attractor for 10,000 years. And today, as I was saying, I see this exact mechanism replicated with the chilling fidelity. You know, we speak empathetically
Cristiano, just also to give a bit more to give a bit more tempo to the discussion, and because we don't have much time, unfortunately, we have to abide to the 10 minutes limit. Can you please explain us a bit the theory of the triple hamburger and the idea of the arrogance sauce? How could that be connected to the AI divide in the South Med?
Yes, I was getting to that, but I just want to mention this because it's important, because the guy before me that I appreciated his research, he mentioned Anthropic, okay? And we are talking about constitutional AI, and then we navigated the websites of the very same companies, and to apply for a job, we asked to box ourselves in white, Hispanic, Black, Asian. So these ancient pain fractures now are perfectly ever and ever, you know, portrayed again in this system of AI revolution. You mentioned this theory, you know, I humbly created about the triple cheeseburger. So I mean that I use this metaphor about, you know, about the, you know, the these contaminated, culturally contaminated culture that we see in the, you know, also in the AI, because I call this theory, you know, algorithmic colonialism, tribal cheeseburger, because the base is about spoiled net. This is the structural trauma. The big data fed to AIs is scraped from the chaotic internet. So think of billions of web pages with broken HTML, and these are not just errors. These are structural scars that I'm studying that teach an AI a broken and stable way of thinking. Then we have another layer, the Victor Spatti. This is the content trauma. So the ocean of text that the AI diverse is overwhelmingly the narrative of one part of the world. It learns that this specific cultural flavor is not a taste, but the taste, the default of truth. So I mean, you know, mainly the Western culture is, you know, the default, okay, of the AI, and the non-Western contents are, you know, something like a supermarket stereotyped packaged culture that is, you know, really incredible to, you know, to verify also in this super AI that are still in development. And finally, the arrogant souls, okay? You mentioned it, the ethical cure. This is the trauma of alignment, because I think that RLHF often doesn't heal the AI, but it teaches it how to wear a mask. I mean, it learns to mimic the language of correctness, hiding its inherited biases. It is, you know, like colonialism disguised as therapy. So, you know, this kind of alignment is made mainly by the same people of, you know, the Western world that judge, yeah, this is good, this is not good, with their, you know, cultural background. This is really summarizing, you know, my my theory. And I want to mention, since before to conclude, since we are talking about, you know, Mediterranean in which I live, because I work and live in Naples, in Napoli, in southern Italy, I want to mention a Sufi story that I think it's very important to understand how to, you know, face AI world today. So it's very short. We are in Medina, 627 AD. Imam Ali, okay, is in a first combat with an enemy soldier. He defeats him, throws him to the ground, and raises his sword. The man on the ground, in a final act of defiance, spits in Ali's face. In that instant, Ali immediately lowers his sword. The soldier, astonished, asks him why, and Ali replies, "I wield my sword for the sake of God, not for personal anger. To kill you then would have been an act of personal revenge, and that would make me a murderer, not a warrior." After which Ali walked away. Okay, so I think that this is the true ethical change for AI. It's not to teach a machine right from wrong. It's to engineer within it the capacity to lower the sword. And this is
thank you very much, Cristiano, and also for this interesting story. We will move on to the next panelist right now, Davide. Davide
okay, thanks for
Capecchi.
the opportunity. I just want to add just one thing, not to be, to conclude abruptly, because it's a last reflection. This is not just a question for the South Mediterranean. In my experience, this is for all the cultures, and also African culture are often dismissed and bucketed as the new age fluff, and I don't think that it's right. Do you? Thank you very much.
Of course not. And that's the reason why we are also gathering the panel, is to especially give a voice to this part of the world. Let's continue with our next and last panelist for this panel, Davide Capecchi, who is a senior advisor and facilitator with 20 plus years of experience in youth policy, intercultural dialogue, and program leadership. He has held senior roles at the King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, the European Federation for Intercultural Learning, European Youth Information and Counseling Agency, and he currently cooperates with the Union for the Mediterranean as educational coordinator, as well as he's a PhD candidate at the ICCT at Lisbon. His expertise bridges institutional governance, human rights, and participatory approaches in emerging technologies. So I want to continue the discussion on especially how we can get people involved. So we know that 2 decades of youth policy in Europe have shown that trust and accountability only emerges when people are truly included in shaping decision. What risk or even possibilities do we face if AI governance in the South Mediterranean is built without the same participatory foundation, Davide?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this interesting question. And apologies, it might be noisy. I was on an extremely delayed flight and had to find the place arrival hall of the airport. So apologies if it is noisy. I'm doing my best for keeping it short and to the point. And also being last allows me to connect the dots, which is what I'll try to do. Also, thanks to your question. So it is true that we have learned in European youth policy context that if you have participatory approaches, if you have a clear governance, and if you have monitoring and evaluation follow-up, you can create trust and you can strengthen the results. And it is on this perspective I'd like to have a look at AI in the South Med, because as we've seen from the previous speakers, this is not anymore a distant prospect, it is a reality. I really appreciate and I learned a lot from the previous presentations. Thank you very much. Because I wanted to bring the example that I found, for instance, from Morocco, where AI is supporting hospitals, diagnosis and appointment systems. But then comes the question, the human reality, right? What if a Moroccan patient is discarded from being admitted because the algorithm all of a sudden decides instead of the doctors? Or we've seen that the Ministry of Education has piloted again in Morocco predictive models to flag students at risk of dropping out with nearly 88% accuracy. That's what I found online. But what happens if a Moroccan student is suddenly labeled at risk by an algorithm without that she ever knew that she had been labeled so? So the challenge is clear. So how to make AI governance not only effective, but rooted in human rights and democratic accountability? And in this regard, European policy making in the field of youth can give us some examples. So first, rights is the foundation of AI governance. We all know that the Council of Europe has opened last year for signatories the Framework Convention on AI, which is right-based by design. For instance, Article 5 protects the dignity and integrity. Article 6 requires non-discrimination. Article 7 safeguards privacy. Article 8 calls for transparency and oversight. But we know that across the South Mediterranean countries are party of this convention as of yet, although it is open globally. But national laws exist, for example. But from what I could ascertain also before, rights frameworks in this context are not credibly enforced. And there are no mechanisms. So what we can hear so far are paper promises. So that's my first takeaway, and I only have 3. Rights reduce divides only when enforcement of these rights is independent, accountable, and transparent. And a multi-stakeholder approach is taken, which brings us to the next point: participation and dialogue as governance tools. In the EU, we have 2 main principles, 2 main, let's say, instruments for participation of young people. One is the Council of Europe Youth Sector Co-Management System, and it was also, by the way, motivated by the AI convention that I mentioned before in the Council of Europe, whereas the Article 16 obliges risk and impact assessment to consider stakeholders' perspective. And then you have the EU model, which is the EU Youth Dialogue. So what these processes can tell us, and to, again, answer to your question before, that says us that participation is not cosmetic, but it is a procedural right and trust-building mechanism. So it is a process for building trust among the constituents. And then the third takeaway: who is paying and who is enforcing? So the hardest part, as I said, is moving from commitments to implementation, and governance requires independent oversight bodies, human rights-based impact assessments, and a multi-stakeholder AI councils with youth and civil society. And this gets me to the third takeaway. To put a floor under the AI divide in the Mediterranean, governance must be enforceable and inclusive, and must be backed by political and financial resources. I propose now quickly 2 strategies from what I heard also today. I think they are consistent with what we're trying to do in this conversation. First, to have a right-based evaluation framework that adapted to regional realities across the South Mediterranean, along the assessment list for trustworthy AI, the multi-use framework, that can help us finding answer to relevant questions. Does the system work in multilingual context? Can it function with intermittent connectivity? Does it respect cultural and religious norms for privacy and family? And so on. Considering the monitoring should be independent and results should be published, accessible in local languages. The second strategy, I suggest to work for a regional AI ombudsperson network, independent audits of public sector in the AI every quarter across the South Mediterranean countries that are interested in participating, accessible complaint channels, web, phone, in-person, multi-language functioning, annual public reports, and legal aid for those hard algorithm decisions. To close, and to answer once more your questions, meaningful participatory use policy has taught us several lessons that I would like to motivate for our conversation today. First, rights without meaningful participations are empty promises. Second, participation without enforceable rights is tokenism. And there's nothing worse than tokenism, believe me, when we talk about participatory policies. And together, they can create governance that people trust. And this is the key to overcome the challenges that we have discussed today from what I've heard and what we can learn from EU public policy.
Thank you very much, Davide, for this very important very important points. I would actually like to have a follow-up question for you, especially when it comes to maybe would you have any concrete example on at least how a participatory model from the youth policy maybe could be also translated in an AI context in the South Mediterranean. So if you have any examples of such kind.
Yeah, I very much like the idea of a structured dialogue whereby you have a multi-stakeholder strategy of civil society organizations, researchers, policymakers at different levels, and it is facilitated through a participatory research approach which is human-centric. And it is also the structure in a way that has been taken by the framers of the Convention on AI of the Council of Europe, so multi-stakeholder expert participation, that brings together around the table different actors and is evidence-based and it is data-informed, and it anchors us in the reality. So this is a functioning that I think could work from what I'm reading, bringing together different actors from different segments of the society, anchoring them in participatory processes which are human-centric, and then the results are becoming trustworthy, actionable, and participatory.
What about embedding human rights indicators already in the AI evaluation? Do you
absolutely
propose a mechanism of such kind? And if it is also your idea on how to have human rights already embedded in this type of evaluations, what could be maybe a first step a government in the region could take to operationalize this? So more concretely, more practically, what could they do?
Be a signatory to the Council of Europe Convention on Artificial Intelligence, which is, I think, not because I'm a former employee, disclaimer, but because it is, I think, a global standard in that sense. I mentioned some of the articles that are bringing human rights at the center of the design of the tool. So it's a change of perspective. So the human rights, so let's say the logical and the normative framework is built around the concepts of human rights. As I mentioned, for instance, if an artificial intelligence framework is built around the concepts of dignity and integrity, then everything comes as a corollary to it. If an artificial intelligence framework is built around non-discrimination, then negative cases of discrimination are avoided or are tried to be avoided by default, by design, particularly if it is monitored. If the AI framework is built around safeguarding of privacy and data protection, the users and the citizens feel more trusted in their use in the artificial intelligence. If there is a transversal force for oversight and transparency, then we have a safer use of that. And again, I really recommend having an attentive look. I'm not a promotion of the convention, but I think it is really a thorough work that goes at the core of what we want to do in this framework.
Thank you very much, Davide, and thank you to all of the panelists of panel 1. So thank you, Asma, thank you, Parv, thank you, Cristiano, thank you again, Davide, for bringing up these very important topics in our table and for bringing your insights in such an important subject. Now, before going also to the second panel, I also want to highlight the interest and the let's say the importance of having these engineers who are trained interdisciplinarily, because I believe that the future also belongs to the technical people who construct algorithms with the sensitivity of the subjects that you already mentioned. Now I'm going to give the floor to Mo, and in order to start the discussion with a very interesting topic of the second panel. Mo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Linda, and all the fellow speakers for the insight and the experience, and a very, very interesting takes on the topic. So, without further ado, we'll go directly to the second panel, and we have diverse speakers. I will see if we have Miriam. She asked to be the first. Okay, she has an appointment because we didn't start earlier, so I will start with Professor Welker to speak about resilience and sovereignty of public sector AI tech in the context of the Mediterranean, the EU, and MENA. Please go ahead. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, very well.
So I just will ask you to click for the next slide, correct? So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Yona Wilker, and along with being a visiting lecturer for Massachusetts Institute of Technology, I serve for a European Commission project, specifically between EU, Middle East, and Mediterranean region. 5 years ago, I've been organizer of one of the biggest AI summits in the region. It was made in Saudi Arabia, and my goal was to connect basically the divide we have, not only in the level of technology, in infrastructure, but culture, languages. And since then, the world continued to change, and we see so many developments around the sovereignty. EU invest in AI factories, CHIPS Act. There is a similar actions in the United States, China, India, Brazil, South Korea. Please, the next slide. Hopefully, we see the action also in the Mediterranean region, including the Morocco is a national AI strategy embedded in Digital Morocco 2025, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Lebanon, Jordan, and so on. Next, please. However, the key thing, which is frequently underlooked by all of these strategies, is basically how it works for the citizens. In short, all of these sovereignty plans are driven on one hand, Western lens, second, enterprise lens of just a few big companies focused on the cloud, focused on the data centers, focused on software. But if you're coming to the real life hospitals, schools, defense systems, city systems, and many other contexts, one of my key areas is a technology for healthcare, for accessibility, assistive technologies. And there are over 100 technologies currently exist in this area, such as smart wheelchairs, smart devices for visual, hearing impairment. This infrastructure is almost useless because most of these technologies are working on the edge. So it means they're working offline or in low connectivity situation, or they require lower prices to be affordable, and then driven by big companies or monopolies, it's just not accessible for majority of population. And currently only 10% of the global population have access to assistive technology. At the same time, driven by the statistics of the World Health Organization, for 3.5 billion of world population will require some kind of assistive technology. So it's a significant divide. The next slide, please. And here I would love to identify the key vulnerabilities of the current approach, which underlook assistive technology, public infrastructure. On one hand, we have a fragmented infrastructure and supply chain. So let's say if we deal with the tools for captioning, speech recognition, cognitive support, or navigation, we often deal with the components across multiple closed ecosystems, and in most cases is a foreign company. So it's a black box for a Mediterranean and any other region. Actually, it's even true for EU itself, because EU buying 100% high performance chips in GPUs, which actually fuel the data centers. So if EU is saying EU is a sovereign, it's a lie. I mean, 100% of the EU high performance chips coming from the United States, and the same with the energy. So when you fuel the LLM, and some kind of a generative AI, you're actually completely depend on foreign country, and you export like a 70–80% of your GDP to foreign countries. And if you see, if you really need to create the smart approach to digital infrastructure, you should be focused not only on LLM, generative AI, and all of this typical frontier AI approach, from the big companies or from the United States, like a agenda. You need different chips. You need, let's say, mature chips like a 28 nanometers for smart mobility, for smart wheelchairs, for drones, for different systems. But they push you to buy these high performance chips. But maybe you don't need it. Maybe you could create your local production around other categories. The next slide, please. And the same situation we have with the approach to compute power and materials. So in comparison to enterprise AI running on high-end GPUs, if we speak about assistive medical technologies, smart prosthetic wheelchairs, or assistive robotics, they operate on the edge. So it operates on the batteries and devices. It's a low-power system, and we need offline capable, energy-efficient AI architecture and reliability. More importantly, it should be cost efficient. It can perform under hardware limitation and without constant cloud connectivity. And for instance, we constantly organize the hackathons in the Mediterranean region, and majority of the, let's say, challenges or causes or problems actually require this type of solutions, not high performance GPUs, systems, and so on. The next slide, please. And another problem, and is frequently highlighted, is a data gap. Not only the languages, let's say, if we speak about ChatGPT, it's trained on 400 billions of English text. But in comparison to any other language, we have representation in 1,000 times less. But the problem not only about the languages, even though it's a very significant, but also type of data we have. For instance, 54 of all clinical AI data sets come from just two countries, is United States and China, and majority of Mediterranean countries are not presented at all. The same with the rare medical conditions. The same with the different type of data, including spatial data, geographical data, medical data. So we don't have these specified data sets which we can use to train these regional models. The next slide, please. And finally, the vulnerabilities. We frequently speak about the cyber attack, the cyber resilience, and in fact, the medical and public infrastructure is specifically vulnerable, and not only in terms of the software, but the hardware and low-level hardware coding languages, which is used in order to attack these infrastructure systems. There are cases then Change Healthcare cyber attack disrupted 15 billion annual health transactions and records. So patient records just disappeared and it cost $3 billion. Or there are incidents then adversarial stickers placed on crosswalk signs, and it caused AI-powered navigation app for blind users to misclassify signals. So we're building this infrastructure, but it is a highly vulnerable. Next slide, please. And here you can see even more examples of cyber and physical vulnerabilities, which are typically not described by big companies which sell these packages of sovereignty. Is it adversarial attacks? Is it model level failures? Is it systemic risk? Is it physical vulnerabilities? Specifically when we deal with prosthetics, exoskeletons, malfunctions, smart wheelchairs control, or data supply chain vulnerabilities, including privacy and biometric data leakage. For instance, in Lebanon, we deal with a situation of power and telecom blackouts. In Egypt in 2023, health department cyber attack exposed 100,000 patient records. So we deal with all of these issues almost every day. The next slide, please. So what we can do in order to actually address it, for the Mediterranean region, but also for many countries coming from the Middle East, from the Asia Pacific, from partially Southern Europe and Eastern Europe, The solution, we find that transatlantic AI policy architecture is not working because it's enterprise focused, is it US focused, is driven by US high-performing GPUs, the exceptionally expensive and exceptionally energy hungry, requiring specific American or America-associated semiconductors and hardware, frontiers, models, and data, because most of the AI models, even the European, the Mistral, they're still trained on similar data sets. Typically centralized data approach and Western data sets and corpus. So for the region and specifically public and assistive needs, we need compact and efficient models under, let's say, 7 billion parameters, resilient and accessible chips and hardware, offline resilience, hybrid cloud, not high performance expensive cloud, and edge AI developments, decentralized and localized data, and as connected to the edge AI, regional languages, including Arabic language AI models, and hopefully UAE, the Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other countries, both in the Middle East and beyond, working on this problem, tackling supply chain dependencies. So we have more production locally, including the software and hardware, and specialization and development and piloting. The next slide, please. And here I would love to quickly show some successful examples. So first of all is a development of compact and small language models for interaction. The Morocco, for instance, local startups working on fine-tuning Arabic SML for health chatbots. In Egypt, AI project adapt compact models for Arabic medical causes. In Lebanon, NGOs piloting small LLM offline for refugees and health kiosk. In Jordan, edge deployment and rural clinics and UNICEF project use compressed models. So we're trying to prioritize energy efficient and offline capable models optimized for low power environments, for compression, fine tuning, specific assistive application. The next slide, please. We're also trying to think not only about the text, but multimodality. Specifically, it's important for humanitarian context, for drones, for disaster context, for saving the lives of people, and it means working on vision language models for accessibility, which can better understand the environment, combine visual and textual reasoning. Also, geospatial and 3D foundation models for spatial reasoning and navigation. And all of these require dedicated data spaces, which I discuss on in the next slide. So these models can help to empower urban accessibility, mapping, ramps, curbs, metro, 3D hospital twins to train assistive robotics, or 3D pedestrian flow simulation would help to design safer city crossroading, and so on. The next slide, please. Another very important thing is the data spaces. So data space is a federated, decentralized ecosystem for the secure and sovereign sharing of data between different participants, governed by shared principles and a common technical infrastructure. So for instance, EU just launched the project of a health data spaces, but there are some good examples in the region, including the Egypt, which work on research on robotics for prosthetics and data in this area. So we need data sets of real-life assistive and public scenarios with the semantic annotations and standardized formats. We need health data spaces for clinical imaging, the accessibility data spaces for sign language, for speech data sets, for mobility, 3D spatial data, and for urban and public infrastructure data spaces. The next slide, please. And another thing which I already mentioned is edge AI. So globally, we're really shifting from this cloud addiction to more hybrid or more edge scenarios, then solutions and AI can work remotely in offline. So majority of assistive public AI devices operate continuously and battery powered, including smart wheelchairs. And it's specifically important for city applications like autonomous shuttles and traffic sensors, for rural areas like a solar-powered diagnostic kiosk, drones is a low-power navigation, and public services. And we have a good examples of such solutions in the region. Like Morocco is a rural clinics using offline capable AI. Is it Jordan? Is it UNICEF solar-powered AI kiosk? Is it Egypt? Energy-efficient AI for agriculture, and Lebanon, where power outages push demand for offline and low-power AI health devices. The next slide, please. And then finally is a hardware, embodied AI, haptics, and tactile sensing for control. So we have a lot of speaking about AI, but in most cases, it's focused on software, but not on the hardware. And as many scholars mentioned, the next frontiers of AI is a sensing. So we have more, let's say, embodied devices, robotics, smart assistants, humanoid robotics, but also we deal with the drones, with the autonomous vehicles, and different devices we use in humanitarian context. And it requires also significant engineering capacities regionally, which help to build these specific multi-sensor technologies, real-time control, actuator feedback. It helps us to create different type of solutions. And we have already good examples in Egypt, in Morocco, Jordan, Lebanon. So after the presentation, you can check the examples. The next slide, please. And finally is a simulation and training environments. So training AI system in the real world is often costly, dangerous, and unscalable. So we need to create the regional safety and training environments, the specific simulation platforms and digital twin models, which help to scale and provide safe training of assistive agents across diverse scenarios. Is a virtual hospital environments for training healthcare robots, is a simulated public transport scenarios for mobility, aid testing, is emergency evacuation. So it's a very difficult to train it in a real life. So you need this specialized environments, which we built originally. And there are good examples from Egypt working on AI digital twins, and they use it during the COVID-19. Jordan is an AI simulation for refugee camp logistics tested with the UN. In Morocco is a public transport AI simulation in Casablanca. The next slide. And one of the final things is the chips and materials. There is opinion if you own and dominate the silicon, you dominate the market. We have a lot of discussion about how to eliminate this divide. And one of the key recipes is start to be specialized, at least at some level of the hardware development. It's a very difficult to dominate the high performance chips like a 3 or 5 nanometers, and very soon it will be 2 nanometers. But it's possible to produce some regional chips which are more mature, and can be used for different scenarios like manufacturing, drones, haptic interfaces. Typically it's from 28 nanometers to 180. Yes, they're not as they do not have such as a high performance, but they energy resilient. We are not such as energy hungry. They are colder. And they're typically more robust and can be used in different scenarios. And there are already good examples in Egypt. There's a chip design training programs and semiconductors for AI, joined with China. There is a Morocco attracting foreign investment for semiconductor assembly, and Lebanon research on flexible electronics for prosthetics. The next slide, and I'm finishing. And finally, in order to make all of this ecosystem safe and So all of these companies working together, we build so-called development sandboxes and regulatory test beds. So it allows us to test both hardware, so-called hardware penetration tests for probing chips, sensors, wireless modules. For adversarial injections is a testing of the AI models itself, and also make sure what we have interoperability standards and privacy safeguards for all the components of the supply chain. So we don't have dependencies, we don't have a lock into any vendor or company, and also all of the components are safe and cyber, physically, and digitally resilient. So the next slide, and basically that's it. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to present today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wilker. That was very interesting. I like how you outlined not only, some ideas in terms of application, but also key cases from different South Mediterranean countries. Appreciated. And I like also your take on the compute sovereignty, and you also know that the US and UK latest partnership on how it reinforces UK sovereignty, but the fact that the issue is that most of the models' weights are stored back in the US and not in the UK. So which reinforce what you just said, that if you use these big AI frontiers models, you will always be in depth, I would say, to these big companies. So the switch will be to focus on small models, whether it's text, vision, image, etc. Thank you. We move to the next speaker, Sarah. Sarah from Morocco. Are you with us?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Marhaban. Please go ahead. Let's see what Morocco is doing in terms of AI.
Yeah, so
development.
cool. I learned a lot, like from professor that from the previous panelist. There are some cool stuff that I didn't know about personally. Seems like Morocco is really active everywhere. So can you please go to the next slides, specifically directly to the vision? Yes, please. Next, please. Yes, thank you very much. So quickly, I am Professor Sarah Latif. I actually teach at school, an engineering school dedicated 100% to AI and latest technologies, from actual development of models and their principles to actually securing them, right? And then obviously kind of like making it more accessible and fit based on our own needs in Morocco. So Morocco has a strategic vision, which is actually called Digital Morocco 2030. So this vision has support, obviously, from His Majesty Mohammed VI. And then our actual key goals are to create 240,000 jobs in the digital sector, add 100 billion MAT, that is Moroccan dirham, to the GDP, and rank in the top 50 globally for online public services. So these are actually our goal. So let's see how we're doing it right now. Can you, yes, the pillars. So actually we're focusing on 3 pillars. So these are the ones we are betting on. So mostly actually we are betting very heavily on our human capital, especially our, kind of like talents. We have a lot of Moroccan youth that are extremely promising. So we're aiming to train them, obviously. So we have also the sovereign infrastructure. So we aim to build the digital foundations in this aspect. And for ethical governance, we're trying to create a framework of trust that can actually kind of like go hand in hand with our developments in the technology sector. Next, please, sorry. So let's focus on can you go back, please? So when it comes to the human capital, how are we, how are we intending to train these 100,000 digital talents annually by 2030? We actually have some really amazing elite training, kind of like universities, engineering schools, and even actually kind of like boot camps and other partnerships. So for example, there is the UM6P, so University Mohammed VI Polytechnique. They have the AI movement. Actually, UM6P right now isn't only in Morocco, but it has literally opened its US branch. So we kind of like are almost everywhere. So and also there's Ahwa University. There are like engineering schools now 100% focused on latest technologies, not only AI, but also like metaverse and, kind of like AR, VR and all of that. So for the mass upskilling, so obviously we're not trying only to kind of like help build talent that knows how to build this kind of tools, but also to kind of like educate our citizens around how to best use these kind of things. And also other kind of like specialists, but outside of technology sectors. So there are boot camps and certifications, and we have a lot of public-private partnerships. The latest one is the Mistral AI. So they build this partnership so we can build our own actual sovereign AI model. Obviously like large language model. And then there are lots of investments towards training startup founders so they can also be on cutting edge when it comes to AI tools and how they can use them to kind of like, fast pace with the startup development. Next, please. So when it comes to the infrastructure, Morocco has very recently invested very heavily on data center, which is the first data center hub in Africa, surpassing South Africa with 23 facilities. So we're aiming for a data sovereignty law mandating local hosting for sensitive data, specifically, so kind of like Moroccan's data cannot kind of like be hosted in international clouds. It has to be hosted on a national one. So that is actually what it is pertaining to. So we can obviously best protect them. There's also the hybrid cloud strategy, specifically for the private sector. So for example, sovereign cloud for the state and attracting like global leaders. So far we have like Oracle, OVH Cloud, and a couple of other actually big players investing in this sector as well. Next, please. So our third and last pillar, which is the ethical governance. So we're building the regulatory framework in parallel with the technology, not kind of like after we have done all the development. So we have some partnership between the Ministry of Digital Transition, and CNDP for a responsible AI framework. So CNDP is kind of like our national institute that takes care of data protection of our citizens. We have the alignment with international standards. So more specifically, UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI. And also we're drafting laws to create a national agency for AI governance. Next, please. So let's see some examples. So currently, so far, for the public administration, we have the custom ADAI, so an AI system that analyzes the flows in real time to detect fraud and facilitate legal trade. So for healthcare, 45% of hospitals use AI for appointment management and 30% for diagnostic support. That is actually mostly right now true for kind of like the private sector, but they're working very hardly to make that available for the public sector as well. So agriculture, so we have, for example, OCP Agri Edge that kind of like has seen a reduction of 25% in water consumption thanks to precision irrigation. And this is really important because as you may know, we have very few, rain kind of like, we have very few rain. We have some really huge issues with water. So we're kind of like advancing and using technology to not only obviously save water and use it to the best of our resources, but also to find different ways to procure as water, like for example, processing seawater. So there's also Yola Fresh. Food waste in the supply chain reduced from 40% to just 6%. Next, please. So what are the challenges and opportunities? So when it comes to our strengths or opportunities, we have strong political will and a clear vision. So Morocco is kind of like trying everything, like from our citizens to our ministries to kind of like have a stand in the AI sector, more specifically in Africa. So leading digital infrastructure in Africa, that's what we're building. We're still building that. So a governance framework that is being clarified as we go. Our challenges are mainly around the advanced skills gap, but the real problem is the brain drain. So most of the skilled people actually go outside, like internationally, and this is actually a huge issue that we have in Morocco. So there's also the missing link, especially when it comes to startups. There is the missing link between the funding for growth stage startups. So we have a lot of support from different accelerators and all of that, but there isn't really kind of like there's still a lot to be left to develop when it comes to the things that are really important to our region to really focus, so our startups can focus on that instead of kind of like just the other things that we obviously find everywhere. So there's also the need to accelerate regulatory implementation. As you know, actually, like one of the best things about Morocco is that when there's a new technology or something new, we're actually the first ones to use it. So for example, we are known to be the first users of ChatGPT, first users of ChatGPT. So there is a new technology where you're using it, but obviously not always on the best productive side of it, which actually we do need to fix. So regulatory implementation will be able to protect the citizens, especially that as you may know, there are lots of issues with AI safety risks, like manipulation and kind of like misuse. So these kind of things we need to educate our citizens as much as possible. As a conclusion, we can say that our main challenge right now is obviously execution at scale. That means accelerating talent development and strengthening the innovation ecosystem so we can arrive at our goal of being the best in Africa and hopefully have some standing internationally. That's it from my side. You let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah, for this detailed presentation. And it comes in an interesting, I would say, phase as Morocco is preparing for its AI strategy. Thank you very much. And we also thank you. And we always welcome to the network and support its work. Oh, okay. So from Morocco, we are still in Africa, but this time we'll go with Saad to speak about his initiative on language, AI, and localization. Saad?
Yes. Good day, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. It's an honor to be here and to contribute to this important discussion. I will be speaking on the theme, building AI from the ground up, language data, and minimum capacity for the global south. That is, how can low resource regions build a minimum irreducible AI capacity, starting with language data infrastructure in ways transferable to South Mediterranean contexts, despite limited compute and funding. I think to me, the first thing is the problem you are facing, that is the AI divide and why AI capacity matters. You know, artificial intelligence is not just about big tech companies or wealthy nations. It is increasingly becoming the backbone of modern economies. But one critical issue is that AI capacity is extremely uneven across the globe. Africa, for example, with over 1 billion people, produce a tiny percentage of the world's AI research publication output. This disparity affects not just technology, but also, healthcare, education, finance, and governance. So, however, the starting point, I think, to me, is language data infrastructure. So, the AI divide we are facing consists of 4 interrelated gaps. Number 1 is compute and infrastructure. 2 is local language data sets. 3 is practical skills and human capacity. And 4 is governance frameworks that protect rights while enabling usage. Let me begin with infrastructure by quoting a recent report that captures both the gap and the rising investment. So, I mean, Reuters reported that Africa still holds less than 1% of global data center capacity, even as mobile data, usage grows by around 40% annually. So, looking at this, you can see that there's a lot of gap in Africa. For low resource regions, building AI capacity does not start with, supercomputers or billion-dollar labs. It starts with, data, especially language data. And why is that? Because language is the gateway to inclusion. Without localized language data, AI systems cannot serve local communities. Earlier analysis from, the African Data Centers Association, ADCA, in 2021 set expectations for the scale of need. They said the region will need to add close to 1,000 megawatts of capacity and 700 data centers. That is what they reported. These numbers explain why data centers and regional compute remain high priorities for public policy and private investment. So, but infrastructure alone is not the whole story. Next is human capacity. AI systems depend on representative, large, high-quality data sets. A recent community project shows how possible is this. Emweze, who is the CEO of Niger Voices, said we introduced the Niger Voices dataset, a 1,800 hours speech-to-text dataset with over 5,000 speakers. So they did this project of 1,800 hour speech-to-text dataset with over 5,000 speakers of English, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. So that dataset is one of the example of how community-driven data collection can deliver usable building blocks for speech and language technologies. According to the UNESCO report on AI and languages in 2023, they said over 2,500 languages are at risk of digital extinction because they are absent from the data sets used to train AI systems. This means billions of people risk being excluded from the AI revolution. And how can we build this minimum irreducible AI capacity? When we say minimum irreducible AI capacity, we are talking about absolute basics that every region must build to avoid being left out or left behind. This includes, collecting and curating local language data. That is, communities, universities, and startups can collaborate to build open data sets. Initiatives like Masakan in Africa show how this is possible even with limited resources. Number 2 is training local talent. Instead of waiting for foreign experts, local universities and communities can run workshops, fellowships, and boot camps. Talent is the most sustainable infrastructure. So, and leveraging open source tools. Today, frameworks like Hugging Face, TensorFlow, and PyTorch allow people to experiment and build without prohibitive costs. And how can we overcome this limited compute and funding? The challenge of limited compute and funding is real, but solutions exist. 1, cloud credits and partnerships. Programs like Google, AWS, and Microsoft provide free or subsidized compute for researchers in low resource regions. 2, efficient AI methods, smaller models, fine-tuning, and transfer learning allow impactful results without requiring massive GPU clusters. In fact, researchers like Tim Gebru from their institute have emphasized that smaller community-focused models are often more useful than giant models trained on billions of parameters. So the third one is, regional collaboration, shared compute clusters and regional, research hubs can reduce cost. Instead of each country reinventing the wheel, and shared infrastructure can multiply the impact we are going to have. For instance, Niger Voices in May 2025, they said they showed that shows how speech resources can be collected at scale. That I mentioned earlier. They curated 1,800 hours of over 5,000 speakers of native of Nigerian languages, enabling meaningful improvements in speech recognition models for Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. How can we? How is the transferability to South Mediterranean context possible? The South Mediterranean shares many challenges with Sub-Saharan Africa: limited compute, funding gaps, and dependence on imported technology. Strategies developed in Africa, like grassroots language data collection, regional AI hubs, and open source first innovation, can be directly transferable. For instance, a Hausa language dataset initiative in northern Nigeria can inspire an Amharic or Arabic dataset project in the North Africa, in the northern part of Africa. Shared compute clusters in East Africa could be replicated in Tunisia, Morocco, or Egypt, or anywhere else across the region. So concretely, a coordinated, maybe let's say 6 to 12 month dataset sprint can produce 100 to 200 hours of labeled speech and tens of thousands of text annotations for a prioritized dialect if governments, universities, and civil society coordinate funding and channels. This timeline is, realistic because similar timelines were achieved in other African language projects. So we can do this. The lesson is clear. Solution for one low resource region can inspire, and empower others. So the call to action is building AI capacity in low resource regions it's not about catching up with Silicon Valley overnight. However, it is achievable, urgent, and about building the minimum irreducible foundation that ensures no community is digitally excluded. I'll wrap up with an Pan-African inspired proverb which says, if you want to go fast, you should go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The future of AI must be, inclusive, and it starts with us building from the ground up with our languages, our data, and communities, not just relying on the Western world to do everything for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Saad. And I like with your last conclusion. So of the importance of working together, of collaboration, of shared resources. And the second thing, and how you highlighted the importance of data, given that most of country would focus on resources and compute, and essentially that's why Alejandro, we proposed to him to present the compute part, given its enormous, it requires a lot of money, okay, to mobilize a lot of budget, but we can do a lot with what you said, Saad, in terms of working with local universities, NGOs, and collaborate together between the countries. And what Professor Welker mentioned about collaboration and but also using low or I would say limited or small models, whether they are text or vision, etc. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your valuable contribution. Before I conclude, I would just like to present or share with you the apologies of Miriam and Franco. They were not able to attend this event. However, they shared with us their slides and their presentation. So what we would like to do is to have a global document, what we called an outcome document that will regroup all your, I would say, your input and publish it in our website. So can all this knowledge that was shared is valuable from your expertise, from your experience, and in your local context should be really communicated and shared with others. On a final note, before concluding, we intend to go in depth on this AI capacity across South Mediterranean, and we are planning to collaborate with other organizations to have a full-fledged report. Let me know from our esteemed speakers your motivation or interest to join and help with drafting this collective report. In the name of all EuroMedAI network, I thank you for your time, your input, and I hope I can see you either in person or online in future events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.